discretion is advised.
If you feeling like a pimp, niggas call pimp.
Date for 100.
Awesome sauce! Hello, everyone. This is Awesome Sauce Radio. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a blessed and amazing Wednesday evening. I am your party host, Blind Adam Wonders, the comic pimp. This is Awesome Sauce Radio. I'd like to thank everyone once again for inviting me into your homes and your hearts. Remember, you don't need sight to have a vision. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And before we bring on an amazing, legendary, talented guest, excuse me, I would like to thank my sponsor. We only have one sponsor for this episode. Comic Pop Collectibles. eBay/Comic Pop Collectibles. Tell Lauren Becker that Blind Adam sent you. He has an amazing variant that is going to be dropped at the Baltimore Comic-Con. It is the Dan Hazen Batman 251 variant drawn by the legendary Bill Morrison. And this thing is going to be amazing. Drafts at Baltimore, and then there's a foil at New York Comic-Con. But, you know, since this is Awesome Sauce Radio, I am the comic pimp. Tonight's special guest is the legendary Bill Morrison. Bill, how are you, sir?
Hey, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being a guest.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yep. Can you, just explain to my audience how you got into comics as professionally?
Well, I started in illustration. Actually, I went to school in Detroit, Michigan. Went to a 4-year art college, the College for Creative Studies. And when I got out, the only work I could find was doing technical illustration, which is mostly work for the auto industry. So very boring, very dry work. But what I really wanted to do was either be a comic artist or an illustrator. And I decided to go out to California because my wife is an actress. And I got a job at a ad agency that specialized in movie poster art. And that was where I met Matt Groening, who was at that time a struggling young cartoonist and writer.
Was that during his From Hell days?
Yes. So he was doing Life in Hell. And but he was also just, taking on writing gigs. And so one of the things he did was he wrote the poster copy for some of the movie posters that we did. So,
wow.
Like the taglines that appear at the top of the poster or underneath the title. Matt wrote a lot of those, and that was where I met him. Years later, I was brought in to do artwork for The Simpsons, primarily for merchandise art. But because when Matt Groening made his deal with Fox, he retained all the publishing rights with the help of his lawyer. He was able to start Bongo Comics. And I was already doing several other publishing projects with him. And we did the first Simpsons comic, which was Simpsons Comics and Stories. And that was not a Bongo comic. It was a publication of Welsh Publishing, which also published the Simpsons Illustrated magazine.
Yep.
And but that was what gave Matt the confidence to start Bongo, because that comic book sold so well.
That's awesome. So getting back to the the variant coming out, how did the Batman 251 variant come out?
Well, I've known Lauren Becker for a couple of years. We're both Detroit area residents. I moved back to Detroit just prior to the pandemic. So I met Lauren in Detroit and got to know him, and I've bought toys and I bought comics from him over the last couple of years.
Lawrence, awesome.
Yeah.
I have known Lawrence since 1999.
Oh yeah.
He's taught me back when he owned Warp 9 Comics
Right.
and took me under his wing, taught me everything I know about comic books. He's been one of my best friends. If he wasn't doing something with his wife tonight, he would have been on. But
Oh wow. I'm sorry.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
actually trying to get the three of you all three of you on to do the show together, but it just didn't pan out that way.
Oh, to get Danhausen on as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great. Anyway, I met Lauren, and like I said, we've gotten to know each other. And one day he called me and he said, "How would you like to do a Batman comic cover? You're not a comic, but a cover." And so he knows from all the stuff that I bought from him, all the Bat stuff I bought from him over the years. He knows how much I love Batman, and he asked me if I was interested in doing a cover, and he explained to me it's going to be the legendary Batman 251, which DC is reissuing. But my cover will be a parody of the original Neil Adams cover, which had the Joker towering over Gotham City holding a big playing card with Batman strapped to the card. So a parody of that, but instead of the Joker, Danhausen would be taking his place. And
I'm sure you guys didn't have to twist Dad's arm to take the place of the Joker. Even an evil clown suits him so well.
yeah, I think it was an easy ask, and I got to meet him a couple of times in the last month, and he's a great guy. And it made me even more proud and happy to have done the cover.
And I know how big of a wrestling fan Lauren is. I know this was a dream come true from him. And I've been under NDA about this forever since I guessed it when he was hinting what it was.
He's good at teasing, isn't he?
Yeah. All of a sudden, I was just like, "Are you and Danhausen teaming up again for something?" And he's like, "I like the sound of Beckerhausen," and I was like, "Yeah." I thought I had a feeling that it was going to be something with him. So this is going to be dropping at Baltimore Comic-Con?
Yes, they're going to drop it at Baltimore. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there because I have a previous commitment. And then the Chrome version will be available. It drops at New York Comic-Con.
Yes, and then there's going to be copies split between the three of you for your various online ventures?
Yes, I think mainly between Danhausen and Lauren. I'll get my hands on as many copies as I can to be able to have at shows, etc. But mostly those two guys.
Awesome. So everyone, this variant will drop at Baltimore Comic-Con, and I think if you all had to get just one convention variant for the year, this would be the one to get. This is just amazing.
Well, thank you. I was so excited and thrilled to be able to do this. This is one of my favorite classic Batman covers. I'm a big Neil Adams fan, and this is one of his best. I think his very best.
This is in his top 3 for me.
Yeah, has to be. So to be able to pay homage to this great, the great original cover with this one was a real dream come true.
That's awesome. Have you seen any of the new Futurama on Hulu yet?
I have. I've seen the first 2 episodes. It's really exciting to see the cast and the crew and the writing staff all back together. When you see those names come up in the credits, it's like traveling back in time because it's all the original writers. Well, maybe not all of them, but all the names that I see as writer producers, they were all there at the beginning. And Rough Draft Animation is doing the animation again. So the original animators, the original voice cast. So it's like a big happy family reunion.
That's amazing. You involved with it in any way at this time around, or are you just a
No,
spectator
um,
like the rest of us at this point?
yeah, I'm really just observing it as a fan because having moved to Michigan, I'm not in Los Angeles anymore, and to work on a show like this, you really have to be in house. You can't really be doing it from across the country. Hopefully, I will get to do some of the merchandise art, um, some of the work that doesn't really um, require that you're there 9 to 5 or 9 to whenever every day, like we were back in the day.
Uh, what do you feel, made Futurama so special? To
Well,
have it have this, because even that first episode, they joke around with it. It's like it's been rebooted a bunch of times, and it always feels like you, instead of it being like a relaunch, it feels like okay, these are some old friends that took some years off.
right, and I think that is what makes it special, and I think that happened because it was a very happy production office, at least from my perspective, when I was working on the show. You know, the everybody involved got along really well, from what I could tell. It's interesting, the very first week, the way Futurama sort of came about was, and my involvement in it was, Matt Groening was working on this new idea, and because I worked for him at Bongo, he came to me one day and he said, "Could you come to my studio a couple of nights after hours and help me sort of visualize what I'm thinking about for this new show?" So I would, after hours at Bongo, I would go over to his studio and he would give me like a couple of sentences about a character, and then I would draw what I thought that character might look like. And then it was a lot of back and forth between me and Matt and a couple of other artists that were brought in. And um, then we developed a pitch. So, we had art boards for Matt to take into Fox and pitch the show. So we had boards with the characters and backgrounds, and he sold the show. I just kind of went back to my regular job at Bongo, but one of the things Matt requested of Fox was that Bongo be given office space in the Futurama building, the building where Futurama production offices were.
Oh wow!
And so because of that, I was right down the hall from the writers and Matt's office and the producers, the casting directors, etc. And when they were working on the pilot, the producers would come down to my office if a design wasn't quite working right and they needed, like an extra person to take a crack at it, or if they just needed extra hands and they knew that I could draw the characters, they would come and have me. Sometimes they would say, "Hey, can you give us, a couple of pages full of spaceships or ray guns, props?" I would do some of the celebrity heads in jars and that kind of thing.
That was always one of my favorite. That's still is one of my favorite bits from Futurama. The
Yeah,
museum of heads.
yeah, I think it was an ingenious way of getting guest stars on the show.
Bracket 2023-08-030-03011.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It's,
Anyway,
it's the
anyway,
curse of adaptive technology.
it got to be a lot of work. So it was a lot of extra work on top of my daily Bongo job. And so I went to one of the producers and I said, don't get me wrong, I love working on the show, but I kind of feel like if I'm doing this much work, I should have a credit and I should actually be on the show. I should really, have a extra salary, etc. And they agreed, and so they made me the art director. So at that point, I was having a lot more interaction with Matt. I was having to go down to his office, and I would walk down the hall, and some of the writers would be maybe coming the other way, and I knew them a little bit, not really super well, but they always seemed uh, like they were tired and maybe kind of depressed and overworked and just not happy and not funny people at first.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, I don't know how this show has got a chance of being funny if the writers are this seemingly miserable. Um, but conditions improved as we got past the pilot, and it seemed like the mood brightened up. I think they were just overworked because they were coming in at 8 in the morning and leaving at 2 a.m. To try to get the first pilot episode done. So um, I think it's a what I came to realize about the writers is that they're really brilliant. They're not only super funny, but they I think we had like a dozen writers, and at least 8 of them had doctorates in different fields.
Oh wow.
So computer science and political science and all kinds of things, biology. So these were very, very intelligent writers, but they also like in college worked on things like the Harvard Lampoon and humor and satire publications when they were in college. So they developed really good comedy chops.
Yeah. Uh, I know that you're also a huge fan and colleague of Dan DeCarlo. Uh,
Yes.
if you had to pick one piece of Dan DeCarlo art to put in a collection, what would it be?
Oh, that's tough. um, I have a pinup that Dan did around 1960 that is a pinup of Betty Cooper from Archie, um, dressed as a drum majorette, and she's sort of like marching and twirling a baton. Really beautiful piece, and I love that period. I love the way Dan was drawing back in the early '60s, late '50s and early '60s. So that's a hard one to, it's hard to narrow it down to just one, but I would say that one would, if I was forced, if I had a gun to my head, that would be the one I would pick.
Awesome. And you know, better choice. Because I always, it's still bad for them to say, it's like, Archie, can't you just make up your damn mind? Or Betty or Veronica?
Well, I think the problem for Archie is that he's never forced to make up his mind. So he has the luxury of dating both Betty and Veronica, and neither one of them ever seemed to force him to pick one or the other. I think if he was, you know, had his feet held to the fire on that, I think he would have to make a decision. But so I guess I'm blaming Betty and Veronica for not doing that.
Ah, okay. See, that makes sense. So they always seem to be like, we could just, they're just like, we could just share them. We don't care. You get Mondays, I get Tuesdays.
Yeah,
we have a Sunday.
It's pretty unrealistic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I said, but it has been like an amazing run with Archie. I enjoy it, and I just sometimes feel like Dan DeCarlo is somewhat underappreciated at times.
Well, Dan and I were friends, and I think at the time before he passed away, he was underappreciated. One of the projects we were working on when he was still alive was a book about his art and his life, and I ended up completing that book after he had passed away. And I think that book is partially responsible for a lot of people discovering him. And the one thing I noticed was that it used to be like before that book came out, you could buy like a nice piece of Dan DeCarlo art for not very much money. And then after the book came out, the prices started shooting up.
I noticed that. I still find like DeCarlo original art cheap from time to time.
Yeah, usually the newer stuff, like the more recent 90s and early 2000s before he passed. But
I just saw
the
a
older
piece
the older
of
stuff
the
art is more expensive.
yeah. I'm actually bidding on a piece on eBay right now. It's from like the mid '80s.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, well, this is only $50. I was like, okay,
Wow. Well, good luck. I hope you get it.
yeah, I'm a huge Carl fan.
Yeah.
All right, the character of Mr. Burns, evil or misunderstood?
Evil.
Ah, no one agrees with me. No one agrees with me that he's just very misunderstood.
No, I think he's definitely evil, but um, he's not completely evil. He has his good points, and he I think at times he can be misunderstood, but um, he's very complex. I mean, you can't just put him in a box. I don't think he's not one or the other. I think he's both.
Do you have a favorite piece of Mr. Burns merchandise that you helped create over the years?
Yes, I wrote most of a book called I think it's called C. Montgomery Burns Guide to World Domination, and I was the editor and I wrote most of it. I don't think I wrote all of it. Um, but it's a wonderful book. It's really funny. It's all about Mr. Burns and various aspects of him that have been suggested by what we've seen of him on the TV show, but we've sort of expanded on things like um, his love for animal furs and things like that.
I'm gonna have to seek that out. That's the first time I'm hearing about this one.
I think you'll like it. I think it's a really enjoyable book.
I guess Mr. Burns is my favorite character.
Oh, okay.
That's the reason.
That's why you're going to bat for him.
Yeah, that's why I think he's. There's a twinge of evil in there. I tend to think he's more misunderstood because he comes from money.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect of that.
You know,
I think nobody who's a villain thinks they're a villain. They always think they're doing whatever evil things they do for the good of something else.
all right, that makes sense. That's why I don't see myself as the villain. All right, yeah, that makes sense. All right, yeah, all right, I can buy that.
Okay, good. I've won you over.
Excellent. I didn't do it right. Excellent.
Yes, you have to tent your fingers.
Yeah, one of these days, I'll have to. Disney will put the episodes in the audio descriptive for the visually impaired, and then I'll finally figure out exactly how it's done.
I hope that day comes soon.
Yeah. What advice would you give to an aspiring or comic book creator or animator just you're wanting to start or just getting started?
I would say try not to do what you think is going to sell, but do what you really have a passion for doing. So if like for example, if you think a certain type of superhero is going to be something that a publisher would buy, but you don't really have a feeling for it, it's not really something you're going to have fun doing, don't do that. Do something that you're excited about, that you have a passion for, because that's where your best work is going to come from. You're going to do your best work when you're not really trying to please somebody, but you're trying to please yourself and you're just having fun.
That's the greatest piece of advice I've ever gotten when asking this question. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
What do you have any fond memories of being the editor of Mad Magazine?
I do. It was really fun. It was the dream come true that I never knew I had dreamed about, because it was one of those jobs. I was only the 5th editor in chief ever of magazine in its almost 70-year history at the time. And so when you get into a job like that, it's not something you can ever dream of doing as a kid. I mean, as a kid, I could dream of drawing for Mad magazine or writing for Mad or maybe working in the office. But I don't think anybody ever dreams of being the editor in chief, because there were just a handful of people who held that job, and most of them held it for, a couple of decades. So when I was offered that job, it felt like a dream come true, but a dream that I never imagined that I would have.
That's awesome. What was it like seeing issue number 9 on the in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
That was great. I actually, while I was still at Mad, I had a hand in that, and I almost killed it because I got a call from Quentin Tarantino's producer, and she told me what they wanted to do, and my first instinct was I told her, let me think about it, but my first instinct was, how do we do a satire of something nobody's ever seen before? Because even in the movie, which obviously I hadn't seen at the time, but even in the movie, you only see little glimpses of that Bounty Law TV show. So how do you do a satire or a parody of something that doesn't really exist? It only exists in little glimpses. So I thought, nah, I don't see how this is going to work. And I kind of took my time getting back to her because I was pretty sure I was going to say no, but I wasn't 100% sure. I still wanted to think about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what if we just had fun with this? What if we just kind of presented it not as a new parody of an old TV show, but as a parody that was done in the early 1960s and for some reason didn't get published in Mad. It got bumped. And then some production assistant found it in a flat file drawer all these years later and said, hey, what's this? I don't remember this from any issues of Mad. Did we ever publish this? And then it turns out we didn't. Mad never published this. Why not? Let's do it now. So the idea of doing that sort of taking that sort of fantasy approach and sort of playing along with the movie, which is basically all about a history of Hollywood that might have happened but didn't. It's the reason it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is it's like a fairy tale. It's a once upon a time. What if this happened?
Which is Tarantino? What in my top 5 Tarantino movies of all time?
Yeah, it's a great movie. So anyway, that was the approach that I said, let's do it. Let's go with that. And then I was suddenly no longer with Mad, but I talked to Susie Hutchinson, the art director, and I realized that I was the only person that was in contact with that Tarantino producer. Nobody else had been in contact with her. So I called Susie and I said, hey, here's the phone number of Quentin's producer. So call her and then, get that project on the books.
That is amazing. Outside of the Danhausen variant for Comic Pop collectibles, you have any other future projects in the works?
I have another variant for Usagi Yojimbo. It's
nice.
for a miniseries, Usagi Yojimbo Ice and Snow.
Nice. I did the preview of that for San Diego.
Yes. So I did a retailer variant for 4C Comics. And you can go to their Facebook page, 4C Comics, and I'm sure there's information about it there. It's I think this week they're going to reveal the image that I painted.
Nice. I will have to check that out.
Good, thank you. It's a watercolor painting, which I haven't done watercolor for many, many years. So, well, hello there. The dog just walked up and started.
Yeah. Yep.
Saying hello.
Hey. What kind of dog?
It's a big. I don't know, maybe like a sheepdog. It's a big fluffy dog.
It looks like it's the size of 2 of my dogs.
Yeah, it just kind of took me by surprise.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to the Usagi Yojimbo. Variant. I'm also actually looking forward to that miniseries.
I think it's going to be great. I read the first issue, and it's got a great cliffhanger. It's very fun, as you would expect from Stan Sakai.
Yes.
I've also been doing the packaging art for the Simpsons Super 7 action figures. The primarily the Treehouse of Horror figures that they've been coming out with.
Yes, the reason why all my money's leaving my wallet thanks to Super 7 lately.
Right. Yeah, me too.
They are beautiful, even without the packaging. They're beautiful figures. Depending
Yeah.
on, I'm a mint and package guy, but you only get so much room before that takes up all the room you have.
Yeah, and they're really great figures. They're fun. They're simple and they're small, but they're really well done.
That's amazing. Are you doing? Speaking of San Diego, how was San Diego this year?
It was great. I had a wonderful time. It was really well attended. We didn't have the actors there that we would normally have. A lot of the studios were still there exhibiting, but because of the actors strike and the writers strike, they couldn't have actors or writers on their panels. But I think they got by just fine, and they did a lot of promotion. I want to, I want to make it clear that I support the actors and the writers in their strike, and I hope they get everything they want.
As do I.
Yeah, but I think the promotions for all the new shows and movies were still very well done, and also it seemed to be more about comics, which
That's what I've been. That's everything I've seen and heard. Seems to comply for this year.
yeah, everybody seemed to be just sort of excited to be putting the spotlight more on comics than they had been.
So, do you think after the strike, San Diego's goes back to status quo, or do we try to combine a little bit of what happened this year with what we've been accustomed to since 2002, 2003 ish?
Well, I think San Diego is a great place for production companies and studios to premiere things. I mean, you've got the most attentive and biggest audience you could imagine.
Amazon, stop. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So yeah, I don't see why I wouldn't go back to more of a more involvement from Hollywood. But I have to say, I exhibit there now and have a table, and I'm sort of down on the end where there's a lot more comic dealers, and the comics aspect of Comic Con is still alive and well. It might get sort of overshadowed by Hollywood when they're really out in force, but I think it's still a great place to go just to celebrate comics, to buy books on comics, to buy old comics, new comics.
That meet certain creators that you're only going to meet at San Diego Comic Con.
Yes, absolutely.
And the only reason I got to meet Roz, God rest her soul, Roz Kirby, was because I went to San Diego Comic Con back in '97.
Yeah, and I think back then, Jack and Roz, I don't know that they did very many other conventions besides San Diego. That was like their home convention.
Have you seen the Stan Lee documentary?
I've not seen it yet.
I want to know, just get your take on the whole Stan Lee Jack Kirby controversy, which still goes on to this day.
Well, I knew Stan, and he was a generous guy. He was a nice guy. He was also a representative of the company of Marvel, and so I know that whenever he spoke about things, I'm sure in the back of his mind he was thinking, I've got to keep my job, so I have to say certain things and present things in a certain light. I wish he would have given the artist more credit. because obviously the way Marvel worked, the artist did a lot of the writing. Um, but we have a organization in Southern California called CAPS, which is it stands for Comic Art Professional Society,
Oh wow.
and it was started by Sergio Aragonis and Mark Evanier and Don Rico back in the late '70s. And uh, every year we would have a banquet and we would honor somebody in the industry. One year we honored Stan Lee, and we have an award called the Sergio Award. So we
I've
presented
heard
that.
of it.
Yeah. And Stan came up and he graciously accepted the award and he said a few words and he started to go back to his seat. But then he suddenly turned on his heels and went back to the mic and he said, I just have to say, um, you know, I did create these characters. I did, create the Marvel universe, but I didn't do it alone. I did it with these great artists. And he named, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, John Romita, uh, John Buscema, Gene Colan, Dick
Yeah.
Ayers. He named off all the artists and he said, and then he started explaining to us how they worked. And he said sometimes they would come in, we would talk about a story idea and it might be something as brief as let's bring back Doctor Doom and then maybe a couple of other details. And then Jack would go off and write a story and it would come back to Stan and there would be new characters like the Silver Surfer that, weren't anything that Stan had even mentioned. And he would write the dialogue. So, in a sense, he was the co-creator because he wrote Silver Surfer's original dialogue, but the idea was all Jack's. And
Yes.
he acknowledged that in front of us. And I think that might have been the first time publicly that he ever did that. But after that point, he started, whenever he was interviewed, he started giving the artists the credit they deserved. I feel.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't been an interview at least in the last 20 years, and I had personal interactions with him when I auditioned for Who Wants to Be a Superhero season one, uh, and he was always crediting Jack and Steve as much as possible, and I think at certain points he only remembers so much,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, he worked when I did my Dan DeCarlo book. I interviewed him in his office, and at that point, I think he had felt like there were so many times where he remembered something one way, and then fans have called him out on it and said, "No, it didn't happen that way. It happened this way." That he was very cautious. So a lot of my questions um, were met with an answer sort of along the lines of, I that may be right, but I really don't recall. But he was very complimentary about Dan, and he did give me information about how they worked together,
Yeah,
and
some
was
of
very
those the model books that Dan drew are just amazing.
yeah. But I think Stan, I think he regretted not giving the artists credit more credit earlier, and I think he tried to make up for it later in life. And for some people, it's too little, too late. But I sort of credit him with um, coming around and realizing, I got to do what's right.
That's awesome. And now for my final question of the evening before I let you go celebrate, Mrs. Morrison's birthday. Happy birthday, Mrs. Morrison, by the way.
I'll pass it along. Thank you.
Yeah, like I promised I would try to keep this short and sweet, and got a little carried away. Sorry about that. But
That's okay.
you know, what do you think the legacy of Bungo Comics is in the fabric of comic book history? Why is it even almost 30 years now still a memorable thing to seek out in your comic book loving life?
I think it's um, one of the things that annoyed me when I was editor in chief at Bongo was that in print, when people would talk about Bongo, they would often refer to it as a licensed book. And a licensed book is where a publisher buys a license from the copyright holder, and then they do a version of whatever it is. And it's usually different. It's usually, like I remember when I was a kid, if I would get like a Roadrunner and Coyote comic book, it would be different from the cartoon. They would bring in characters that didn't exist on the cartoon. They would give the characters dialogue and personalities that didn't really match how they were on TV. And that kind of stuck with me. So when we started Bongo, the mission was to make it as much like the TV show as possible. And the fact that Bongo was owned by the creator, Matt Groening, absolutely made us not in that category of licensed comics. So we weren't sort of like an inferior version. We tried as much as possible to be right in step with the TV show.
And there's times when the books felt like a continuation of the TV show or an expansion.
Yes, exactly.
Like back in that and a great example of that is the Itchy and Scratchy miniseries.
Yeah, that was a fun series. Although we realized, kind of for the same reason I was just talking about with Roadrunner and Coyote, that because Itchy and Scratchy has all this, bloody violence, cartoon violence. It's hard to do that in print because on TV, if Scratchy gets his head cut off and there's like a splash of blood, it's over in a second, and then it moves on to something else. But in print, you're forced to kind of look at it, and it's more disturbing. So we pulled back on that, and we realized that the fans didn't like it as much because we were pulling back on the violence. But if we did it as graphically violent as it is on TV, then parents were upset, and we got angry letters from parents. So we realized it was almost impossible to to please everybody. So from that point on, after we did the miniseries and the one winter special, we decided let's just do Itchy and Scratchy like they do on the show. So we'll have an episode, and then there might be a page where Bart and Lisa are watching Itchy and Scratchy on TV, and that episode that they're watching somehow relates to the story that we're telling.
Which probably makes it easier than doing a full 22 to 36 page full-length comic with Itchy and Scratchy as the main feature.
Yeah, but also I think just more satisfying because it was more authentic.
Yeah. But like I said, Bongo was a fun ride. I thank you for the memories, and I thank you for being a guest. Where can my audience find you online?
On Instagram, I'm at Atomic Battery, and you can find me on Facebook at my studio page, which is Atomic Battery Studios, Bill Morrison.
And last but not least, is your commission list open again?
It will be very soon. I'm finishing up some commissions at the moment in the next couple of weeks, and then I think we're going to open it up again in when I do Fan Expo Toronto in a few weeks.
How many Fan Expos do they have nowadays?
They have a lot.
Next month, there's like at least 4 of them.
There's more than that because they bought Wizard World, so now they own all the Wizard shows, the former Wizard shows.
Yeah, because there's Boston this week, there's Chicago next weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a good Fan Expo.
Yeah, they even own MegaCon down in Florida.
Yeah, I didn't make it out there this year. But once again, thank you so much for being a guest. I thank you for all the memories. And once again, for everyone, Baltimore Comic-Con, the Batman 251 Danhausen from my good friend over at Comic Box Collectibles drops. So pick it up, and you have yourself an amazing evening, Bill.
Be sure to pick that one up, everyone, because you'll be sorry if you don't. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate it. Have fun.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, like I always tell everyone, man, this was a dream come true. To be able to talk to someone who had a hand in the creation and the breathing life into the Simpsons is a dream come true for me. I've been a Simpsons fan since '86 or '87, whenever those Tracy Ullman shorts came out. And chase your dreams, you just might catch them. Just if you have something you want to do in this life, do it before it's too late. You don't need to have a vision. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. Don't let anyone tell you no. Find the faith. Keep that faith. Put a good group of people around you. I have a gang of idiots who I wouldn't give up for anything in the world. One of them is the very quiet voice of God for some reason right now.
You wanted me to be nice, so I was nice.
No, I appreciate that. But I put a good. All kidding aside, just put a really good group of people around you. I wouldn't trade Al, Mega, and Calamity, and JV, and Michaela, and Maya, and a few other people that are coming in now. For anything in the world. And with that, I think is a perfect way to end it. Just chase your dreams, live your life to the fullest, and appreciate everything you have while you have it, because you never know in this life. With that, once again, I'm going to thank my sponsor, Comic Pop Collectibles, eBay/Comics Pop Collectibles. Tell Lauren Becker that Blind Adam sent you. Keep one foot in the gutter, one fist of gold. I love you all. Blind Adam out.
Like a pimp.